33. Vern Tessio was killed in a house fire that swept a Lewiston apartment building in 1966. In Brooklyn and the Bronx, they call that sort of apartment building a slum tenement, I believe. The fire department said it started around 2 in the morning, and the entire building was nothing but cinders in the cellar hole by dawn. There had been a large, drunken party. Vern was there. Someone fell asleep in one of the bedrooms with a live cigarette going. Vern himself, maybe, drifting off, dreaming of his pennies. They identified him and the 4 others who died by their teeth. Teddy went in a squalid car crash. That was 1971, I think, or maybe it was early 1972. There used to be a saying when I was growing up, if you go out alone, you're a hero. Take somebody else with you, and you're dog piss. Teddy, who had wanted nothing but the service since the time he was old enough to want anything, was turned down by the Air Force and classified 4F by the draft. Anyone who had seen his glasses and his hearing aid knew it was going to happen. Anyone but Teddy. In his junior year at high school, he got a 3-day vacation from school for calling the guidance counselor a lying sack of shit. The GO had observed Teddy coming in every so often, like every day, and checking over his career board for new service literature. He told Teddy that maybe he should think about another career, and that was when Teddy blew his stack. He was held back a year for repeated absences, tardies, and the attendant flunked courses, but he did graduate. He had an ancient Chevrolet Bel Air, and he used to hang around the places where Ace and Fuzzy and the rest had hung around before him. The pool hall, the dance hall, Suki's Tavern, which is closed now, and the Mellow Tiger, which isn't. He eventually got a job with the Castle Rock Public Works Department, filling up holes with hot patch. The crash happened over in Harlow. Teddy's Bel Air was full of his friends. 2 of them had been part of that group he and Vern took to bossing around way back in 1960, and they were all passing around a couple of joints and a couple of bottles of Popov. They hit a utility pole and sheared it off, and the Chevrolet rolled 6 times. One girl came out technically still alive. She lay for 6 months in what the nurses and orderlies at Central Maine General called the C&T ward, cabbages and turnips. Then some merciful phantom pulled the plug on her respirator. Teddy Duchamp was posthumously awarded the Dog Piss of the Year award. Chris enrolled in the college courses in his 2nd year of junior high. He and I both knew that if he waited any longer, it would be too late. He would never catch up. Everyone jawed at him about it. His parents, who thought he was putting on airs. His friends, most of whom dismissed him as a pussy. The guidance counselor, who didn't believe he could do the work. And most of all, the teachers, who didn't approve of this duck-tailed, leather-jacketed, engineer-booted apparition who had materialized without warning in their classrooms. You could see that the sight of those boots and that many-zipper jacket offended them in connection with such high-minded subjects as algebra, Latin, and earth science. Such attire was meant for the shop courses only. Chris sat among the well-dressed, vivacious boys and girls from the middle-class families in Castleview and Brickyard Hill, like some silent, brooding Grendel that might turn on them at any moment, produce a horrible roaring like the sound of dual glass-pack mufflers, and gobble them up, penny loafers, Peter Pan collars, button-down paisley shirts and all. He almost quit a dozen times that year. His father in particular hounded him, accusing Chris of thinking he was better than his old man, accusing Chris of wanting to go up there to the college so you can turn me into a bankrupt. He once broke a Rheingold bottle over the back of Chris's head, and Chris wound up in the CMG emergency room again, where it took 4 stitches to close his scalp. His old friends, most of whom were now majoring in smoking area, catcalled him on the streets. The guidance counselor huckstered him to take at least some shop courses so he wouldn't flunk the whole slate. Worst of all, of course, was just this. He'd been fucking off for the entire first 7 years of his public education, and now the bill had come due with a vengeance. We studied together almost every night, sometimes for as long as 6 hours at a stretch. I always came away from those sessions exhausted, and sometimes I came away frightened as well, frightened by his incredulous rage at just how murderously high that bill was. Before he could even begin to understand introductory algebra, he had to relearn the fractions that he and Teddy and Vern had played pocket pool through in the 5th grade. Before he could even begin to understand pater noster qui est in caelis, he had to be told what nouns and prepositions and objects were. On the inside of his English grammar, neatly lettered, were the words, "fuck gerunds." His compositional ideas were good, and not badly organized, but his grammar was bad, and he approached the whole business of punctuation as if with a shotgun. He wore out his copy of Warreners and bought another in a Portland bookstore. It was the first hardcover book he actually owned, and it became a queer sort of Bible to him. But by our junior year in high school, he had been accepted. Neither of us made top honors, but I came out 7th, and Chris stood 19th. We were both accepted at the University of Maine, but I went to the Orono campus while Chris enrolled at the Portland campus. Pre-law, can you believe that? More Latin. We both dated through high school, but no girl ever came between us. Does that sound like we went faggot? It would have to most of our old friends, Vern and Teddy included, but it was only survival. We were clinging to each other in deep water. I've explained about Chris, I think. My reasons for clinging to him were less definable. His desire to get away from Castle Rock and out of the mill's shadows seemed to be my best part. And I could not just leave him to sink or swim on his own. If he had drowned, that part of me would have drowned with him, I think. Near the end of 1971, Chris went into a Chicken Delight in Portland to get a 3-piece snack bucket. Just ahead of him, 2 men started arguing about which one had been first in line. One of them pulled a knife. Chris, who had always been the best of us at making peace, stepped between them and was stabbed in the throat. The man with the knife had spent time in 4 different institutions. He had been released from Shawshank State Prison only the week before. Chris died almost instantly. I read about it in the paper. Chris had been finishing his 2nd year of graduate studies. Me, I had been married a year and a half and was teaching high school English. My wife was pregnant, and I was trying to write a book. When I read the news item, "Student fatally stabbed in Portland restaurant," I told my wife I was going out for a milkshake. I drove out of town, parked, and cried for him. Cried for damn near half an hour, I guess. I couldn't have done that in front of my wife, much as I love her. It would have been pussy.